If you are in a place where it is comfortable to do so, please close your eyes and begin to take a few slow, long, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With every inhale, feel more light and peace, extending into your body, mind, and affairs. And as you let go, with each exhale, allow gravity to take all tension away from you and anything that you do not want. Inhaling peace and light, and dropping away everything that is tense with each exhale. We picture ourselves on top of a beautiful mountain in the center of a circular grove of trees. Inside the center of our circle, a bonfire blazes forth, lighting us and the grove up with a sacred golden light. We recognize that this is the light of perfect love and perfect trust, and it easily burns away everything that is not like itself. Into this sacred space, we now invoke the presence of our Creator. To many of us here, our Creator reveals themselves as a mother and father, a god and goddess. Into this sacred space, we also invite the presence of our angels and our teachers and our guides. We ask that we be guided and led as we walk upon the way, becoming happier, more healthy, more loving, and more peaceful people. Thank you very much. If it's appropriate out loud, you can join me in saying, "Blessed be." I had posted on Facebook and on YouTube a few days back a little post about forgiveness and the benefits of forgiveness, and especially in regards to a story about somebody that I worked with at one point who was in a lot of debt, and this person used the power of forgiveness to unravel their debt problem, and it worked really well for them. Invariably, when I speak of forgiveness, I get pushback, and people don't like it. I get very upset. And I'm going to share with you one of the responses I got because I think it's a good one, and then I want to use this as a jumping off point for what I want to talk about today. Her response to that post was, "I have such a problem with this. Bad people should not get forgiveness for doing you wrong. I'm not holding on to it. I haven't retaliated, but I'll be effed if I'm going to offer them a blessing. I wouldn't do to others as was done to me. I've stayed away and ignored. But if I let them do to me and then I forgive them, it's like they won. They don't deserve to be one up on me. I just feel people should be held accountable. If someone asks me about her, I'll say she is the worst person, and to stay clear, I'm not lying and letting more people be treated like this when I could have warned them. Some people are just plain bad people." All right. So if you're listening, I would like to just alert you to when you say, "I'm not holding on to this," it doesn't seem that way. And if you're in a place where it's appropriate for you to do so, I'd like you to repeat out loud the following sentence. Nobody gets to rush me. Nobody gets to rush me. If you're not ready to forgive, then you're not ready to forgive. So it's fine for you to be where you are, but I would just like to point out that you do not seem to be at peace with the situation. And so when you say, if I let them do to me what they did and then I forgive them, it's like they won. And what I would like to say to you is that if you're not at peace with the situation, it's like they've won. Right? So you take as long as you need to take to find peace with that. But I do want you to recognize that it doesn't appear to me as though you are at peace with it. And it seems like they have won. They have won. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of my own story because I think my own story is something that I know better than anything else. And I think that it might help. When I was a newborn baby, I was thrust into childcare because my mother was a single parent. And I was given over to an older sibling, she's 13 years older than I am, to care for me. And not only was she probably too young for that, but that's all my mom could afford, but she was not stable. she was not healthy mentally. And so I was very brutally abused and beaten from a very young age to about, I would say, age 7. Then I moved in with my father, and then the beatings stopped. But every single day of my life as a young child, I was waiting in fear and anticipation for physical beatings and brutality. I would get totally bloodied sometimes by this person. And for a long time, I carried around resentment, not only for her, but also for my mother for allowing such a thing to happen. As I carried this resentment with me, even if I was capable of suppressing it, it seemed to have the ability to be creative and call forth more experiences which mirrored that. I was at 15 years old, I was raped at gunpoint. With a big double-barrel shotgun. The person had the gun pointed at my foot the whole time he was raping me and telling me that I can't say anything or don't scream or anything, or he'd just blow off my foot. He's not going to kill me, he's going to blow off my foot. So, of course, I let it happen. And then he got up and he started laughing at me. And he said the gun wasn't even loaded. And so I was just getting ready to get up and leave. And he came back in and he said, but it's loaded now. And he started the whole thing over again with me. So this went on for several hours. Finally, the guy threw like $20 at me and said, get out of here. And I left. Treated me like a prostitute, And I don't want to go into all of the circumstances of how I got there, but part of how I got into that situation was probably some unwise choices on my part, definitely. But I didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserved to be beaten up as a child. One other little story. When I was in 7th grade, I went from a very small school into a big junior high school and then into a high school. I was taunted and teased and bullied to a degree that most children would never understand. Now, I know a lot of kids are bullied. But this was on a level that was so over the top. Like the entire school bus, the entire school, I would have crowds of children running after me and taunting me. It was just evil. And that went on for several years. So my point in telling you this is not for you to feel bad for me, but to let you understand that I understand what you're saying. I understand what it means to have horrible things done to you. I do. And when I started getting involved more and more in this kind of work, the kind of work that I do now, I became aware of the power of forgiveness and how important it was to not only make me feel better, but to disconnect me from those parts of my mind that were capable of recreating those circumstances again and again and again for myself. Because as I was holding on to resentment, I was actually tying myself to a basic Groundhog Day of recreating similar situations on some level or another over and over again. And so I started looking at the possibility of forgiveness as a way out, as a means of escape and protection for myself, because I couldn't figure out anything else to do. But I want to be clear that I wasn't able to forgive some of those people for a long, long time. And for me, it took decades for the rapist to get forgiveness from me. But the difference is that I wanted to be free from it. I wanted to have that forgiveness. That was my goal. But I had to take as long as I took. Nobody got to rush me. And it wasn't until I found that mantra of nobody gets to rush me that I started to actually be able to forgive. Because up until that point, hanging out with these communities that were all into forgiveness, I really felt like if I didn't have the whole thing done, there was something wrong with me. If I didn't have all that forgiveness completed, there must be something wrong with you. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just forgive? Forgive and then be freed from this. Well, because it takes as long as it takes. That's why. For one thing, it's really hard to forgive somebody that hasn't apologized. It's very difficult to forgive somebody that has no remorse, that thinks that the whole thing is funny. That's very challenging to forgive. But what I had to recognize, and what I'd like for you to recognize, is that I don't forgive for their sake. I'm not forgiving them so that they can feel better. I'm forgiving so that I can be released from them. I don't forgive them and then go have lunch with them and say everything's cool and you can do it some more. I forgive so that I'm not vulnerable to that kind of thing anymore. I forgive so that I'm not a doormat anymore. I forgive so that I can take back my power, because it's my power to forgive. So I forgive because it releases me, not because it's good for them. Now, part of the thing that I find fascinating is that people go to the ends of the earth looking for amulets and talismans to protect them from negative energy, when they don't understand that the negative energy is something that they carry with them. You don't need amulets of protection if you are capable of letting go of the resentment that you're carrying. Because it's like you're carrying this big magnet with you when you have those resentments. And your life is going to recreate situations in one level or another. And you're going to attract situations and people to you to help work out whatever that resentment is, one way or another. So you can take as long as it takes, but if you don't have the goal in your mind that you're willing to let go, that you're willing to let go of this resentment, that you are really willing to be in a place at some point in time where you can picture them without the sting, without the heart palpitations, where you can picture them and say, I sincerely wish you all the blessings of life, where you can visualize them and say, I have no negative feelings toward you. I have nothing but love for you. You're not doing that so that you can grant them immunity so that they can go about their business and keep doing what they've done. It's not that at all. It's so that you can be free, so that you can be protected and safe. And the other thing, I know we've talked about this several times before, but boy, I felt like we needed to talk about it again because it really brings stuff up in people. And I want to make sure that I'm clear about this, because I do understand what you're talking about when you say they don't deserve my forgiveness. Okay, they may not deserve your forgiveness, but you deserve your forgiveness. You do. And you're just like a lot of people. I get a lot of this. I haven't retaliated, but I'll be effed if I'm going to offer them a blessing. Well, okay. But do you see that is a very clear indication that you are hanging on to toxicity. And those toxic vibrations are very busy. And you're not safe in the midst of them. So if you want to be freed from that, it's up to you to offer that blessing. Nobody gets to rush you, but I do want you to know that that's really the only way. Now, sometimes it takes a big, long route. Sometimes we got to curse them before we can find forgiveness. I did a whole lecture on that, and that's fine. You do that. Those psalmic curses are there for a reason. You need to do what you need to do, but your goal has to be finding peace with this person, because if that's not your goal, then you'll never achieve it. And if you don't achieve it, you're never going to be freed from this, and you're going to be perpetually creating and recreating situation after situation after situation where you're going to have more and more problems. Because that's how the mind works. The mind is creative. And we have to take responsibility for our thoughts. And if our thoughts are based on resentment, then we have to do what we have to do to get through that resentment in order to be freed from it. And if we're not willing to do that, that's fine. But then don't complain that you have the consequences of holding on to that resentment, because that's just how it works. So it's not your fault that you were abused. I've never felt like it was my fault that any of those things happened to me. But I did have to take responsibility for them. And I did have to take responsibility for the emotions and the resentments that I was carrying, because otherwise I would not be freed from them. I would never find peace, and I would be living that Groundhog Day for the rest of my life, where I was always looking over my shoulder and for the next abuser, for the next abuser, for the next abuser. So in order for me to find release and find protection and safety, I had to find forgiveness. And it took as long as it took. Nobody got to rush me. It wasn't up to anybody else whether I forgave and when I forgave. That was all up to me. But that didn't change the truth. That until I was able to release that, I got to hold on to it, and I got all of the consequences of that. You can't hold on to some hot piece of metal and say, but I don't want to be burned. You can't hold on to resentment and say, I don't want to be poisoned. There's that old saying that is very apt, that holding on to a resentment is like drinking poison and hoping that the other person dies. But I had to come to the point of view and the realization that these people that I was holding resentments over, they didn't care. They didn't care that I was in pain. They didn't care whether I forgave them. They don't care. I mean, and if they did and they apologized, I mean, that's great. That sure makes it easier. But they don't care. So I'm not doing it for their sake. They don't care one way or the other. It's none of my business. But for my sake, I had to say, okay, I've got to get to the place where I can imagine them and say, I forgive you, and I wish you sincerely all the blessings of life. And I want that. That's my goal. And I'm just going to keep practicing until I get there. And I'm going to keep doing what I need to do to get there. And I am doing it for me. I'm doing it because I love myself enough to forgive. I care for myself enough to forgive that I don't want this poison in me anymore. I don't deserve that. And if I resent them, like you said in your response, they win. Yay, they win. Because all I do is walk around with this burden, whether or not I'm conscious of it. Walking around with this burden, they won. My resentment is proof that they won. So I'm going to be the winner. I'm going to take control, and I'm going to find forgiveness. And it's going to take as long as it takes, but I'm going to get there, and they will not win. They will not have power over me. Right? So I'm never looking to forge a relationship with these people again. You know, I'm not looking to tell them, oh, it's okay. It's fine. You don't have to worry. What you did was just fine. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is you really hurt me, and I forgive you anyway. Why? Because that's called a miracle. That's the kind of power I operate under. That's how powerful I am. Right? So when we forgive, we are demonstrating power beyond this world. When we forgive, we are demonstrating that we are super beings. And when we forgive for our sake, for our own sake. We do it out of self-interest. It's a selfish act, and that's a good thing. Taking care of ourselves like that. Taking care of ourselves. Doing the work that we need to do in order to feel safe, in order to feel pure, in order to feel at peace and at home, rather than always looking over our shoulder, always resenting, always bubbling over with anger or fear based on what happened. When we truly are able to forgive and we are able to see that person as a holy child of the universe that was sick, that was twisted, that had really bad behavior, that wasn't operating under any kind of sanity, when we can do that, then we find power. We find release. We find a oneness with our soul that because of their bad behavior before and the resentment that ensued, we were disconnected from, that we didn't have access to. We weren't able to make anything happen for ourselves because all of our power was being drained and used for this resentment. So a lot of health problems cleared up as a result of that for me. A lot of financial problems cleared up as a result of that for me. A lot of interpersonal relationship problems cleared up as a result of that for me. A lot of neurotic patterns cleared up spontaneously as a result of that for me. So did I do it for their sake? Not on your life. I did it for me. I did it for me. But they did benefit. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that they benefited. On some level, they did benefit. Now, I don't know these people anymore. I haven't followed up with them. I don't know what they're like anymore. I don't know if they're still that way. Even my sister, I haven't spoken to her in, 20 years. Maybe I will. I mean, it's not that I'm actively avoiding her, but she sure is actively avoiding me. But that's okay, because if she came into my life, I wouldn't have that sting anymore. I'd say, oh, hey, how you doing? I wish you all the blessings of life. Why? Because you don't have any power over me anymore. I'm not afraid of you. You have no power over me. That guy came in with the shotgun. Pfft, give it your best shot, buddy. I'm protected. You don't have any power over me. Why? Because I forgave you. And there's nothing you can do about that. You don't have control over that. Right? So the power of forgiveness is not something to be taken lightly, but it's also not something that anybody can rush. You do it the way you need to do it, but do it for you, not for them. Do it so that you can have peace and power, not because you're condoning their behavior. It's the opposite of becoming a doormat. You'll never be a doormat. Nobody can ever walk over you when you're under the protection of your soul. And you're under the protection of your soul when you no longer choose to carry resentments. And that takes as long as it takes. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. I so appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be.